50 years ago, on a Friday morning, I was in Mr. Casey's math class, and the telephone in the classroom rang, and Mr. Casey went and picked it up, and then his face completely changed aspect and became very pale. And when he hung up, he had the task of telling us that the president had just been killed. And I remember sitting there, not just then, but that whole weekend, you know, what unfolded, just being dazed and going, how is this possible? How is this possible? You know, as somebody in the boomer generation, when the country was, after the war, was very hopeful, was very prosperous, and being brought up on this idea that we're the greatest country and we're for peace and liberty and equality, and you know, living a fairly sheltered life up until that moment, I would say. And then having that happen was like, wait, this doesn't fit into what I was raised to believe this country was about. Even though at the same time I was raised to believe in equality and justice and all these things, I remember the nuclear bomb tests, you know, the what do you call it, the drills that we had when we were all supposed to, as little kids, I remember, do you remember? Mm-hmm. You know? And the bell would go off and you would dive under your desk with your hands like this, you know, in case Russia was dropping a bomb on us. It was interesting that that became so conditioned in me that years later when I was in an earthquake in Los Angeles, that's what I did. You know, it's like, that's what you do. I woke up from sleep and I went under the desk like that, and then I realized, no, that wasn't what was happening. It was an earthquake. But just how, and then over that weekend, and watching on TV Ruby kill Oswald, and going, wait a minute, I thought this was America, where people were protected, where people were good, where, you know, kind of the Second World War is over, you know, we won our moral victory, but this is not fitting into how I was raised. And, you know, just looking at how that kind of event conditioned us, you know, what it made us think of life. And then a few years later, when RFK was killed, you know, I remember that day I was at my boyfriend's house. My boyfriend wasn't there, but I was with his mother, and his mother did volunteer work at the VA, and she was taking me to the VA because I wanted to go there, you know, and volunteer with her that day. And then the news came that RFK was killed. And again, that same kind of, you know, what? But by that time I was much more savvy about the world's working. You know. And then Martin Luther King, and before, yeah. And so all of that, just thinking, you know, how does that influence you as a child? How does it condition you? What does it make you think about the world? And then how do you respond as a way, respond to what you've now learned to think about the world? And, you know, many people are saying, oh, that's the day where America lost hope. And somebody said the president lost his life, but the country lost its innocence, yeah, or something like that. And yet at the same time seeing that everything that followed was already going on before, You know, the civil rights movement had already begun. The protests about the Vietnam War, you know, my generation's flower children, everything. The seeds of all that was before, you know, it wasn't that the assassination started it all. But then, you know, in thinking about all these things, okay, then what? Then what? Kind of, yeah? And okay, so you see how it influenced you, and you see that conditioning. And then from a Dharma perspective, how do you respond to that, no matter what it was, you know? You respond with compassion, you respond with renunciation, you respond with taking responsibility for your own actions and your own efforts to contribute to the good of all. So, whereas some people kind of respond to that with just cynicism or depression or giving up hope or whatever, yeah, especially the cynicism. Yeah, because that's how I responded for a long time, you know, in college. Very cynical. But learning from a Dharma perspective, all those things, no matter what you encounter, what kind of hellish situation, then to always tap into, you know, how can I increase renunciation? How can I act with compassion? How can I develop fortitude and courage and tolerance in this kind of situation? How can I look at this situation with wisdom? How can I help those around me? How can I prevent further anger and further degeneration? Yeah? So in all those situations, training the mind always, you know, with a positive view, no matter what personal tragedy we encounter or what national tragedy or what world tragedy, you know. It's like, it's our choice about how we respond. Yeah, and we can, you know, take that up and do something good with it, instead of letting the afflictions take over and run the show and make us into the kind of person that we don't want to be, who doesn't help anybody. Yeah? So, this just came into my mind because in Dallas, they're having a memorial service today. So I clicked to look at it. I got about 5 minutes. And they were singing Glory, Glory, Hallelujah. Mm-hmm. Which I tried O Mani Padme Hum, and it does fit in with it. Yeah, you could sing O Mani Padme Hum right together with Glory, Glory, Hallelujah. And thinking of those lyrics there, you know, it's one thing about God trying to make them holy and we're trying to make them free, sung by the military choir. You know, and going, okay, that's some people's outlook. You know, I have a different outlook, and but that same enthusiasm that is expressed in that song, because that song expresses enthusiasm, and it expresses going forward in a good direction. So what we have to do is take that same enthusiasm and spirit of going forth in a good direction, but go in a good direction with it. Yeah? And that's our job. That's our choice. That's our responsibility.